Welcome, friends. We're here to talk to you today about emotional CPR. I am Lynn McLaughlin, and I'm a trainer of eCPR as well as a peer specialist for the state of Wisconsin. My first interaction with emotional CPR was at the State of Wisconsin Mental Health and Substance Use Conference. And I sat through the training and was instantly pulled into it as a person that values emotion and emotional expression. So when the workshop was done, I grabbed my business card and I ran up to them and I said, I don't know what I need to do, but I want in. And I have been in love with it ever since. I just love everything about it.
And I'm Karen Iverson-Riggers, and I also love eCPR. But I am an eCPR trainer, a Wisconsin Certified Peer Specialist, an advocate, a mom, a writer, storyteller, an entrepreneur.
Awesome
An awesome sauce.
An awesome sauce.
And I first came to eCPR through my work with Iris Place Peer Run Respite. And I remember taking the training and simultaneously, this intuitively spoke to the way that I wanted to support other folks, and also kind of my head exploding, oh my gosh, this changes how I want to be with myself and in relationship to other folks. And so our eCPR journey continues together, and we feel like eCPR is more important now than ever because we are facing a global public health crisis, and that's a crisis of social disconnection and isolation. Dr. Vivek Murthy, the 19th Surgeon General of the United States, said that loneliness is a public health concern. It's a root cause and contributor to many of the epidemics sweeping our world, from addiction to violence to depression and anxiety. And so we feel like the answer to this is connection and eCPR.
Yes, we do. The National Empowerment Center defines emotional CPR as a community health education program that trains people or teaches people how to assist another person experiencing emotional crisis. And there's a few words in that definition that are really important to pull out and unpack. Community being one of them, in that in relationship with other people, that's how we heal, that's how we connect. And also community in that the training is for everyone. Another word that's really important to pull out is assist. We're not asking you to fix another person or think of the right answer or the right words. And it's being with another person is an important part of emotional CPR. And then the last word that's really important to pull out is the word crisis and how we define crisis and the recognition that crisis is subjective. Something that could be crisis for me may not be crisis for you. And then also remembering that crisis is a very normal human experience that we have all experienced at one time or another in our lives. And remembering that, it's also important to remember that crisis can be a single occurrence. It can be something that happens in your everyday life, like a car breaking down, Lord knows. It's a crisis for me. Or very long-term or ongoing, such as some of the systemic challenges that people face. And remembering that it's just so many different things.
It's really part of the human experience.
Yeah.
Crisis.
Exactly.
So when folks came together to develop eCPR, it's a program of the National Empowerment Center, there was a diverse group of folks with lived experience with mental health, substance use, crisis, that all came together, and this is the one that I think is most important. They said it's not help if it's not helpful. And what they were saying is often when we're struggling with distress or crisis, right, we're sent somewhere to go get help. And sometimes that can be re-traumatizing, and sometimes it doesn't, we're not even heard, right, in those spaces. And so eCPR was created by a diverse group of folks who said that we want to create something that's for everyone, right? Anyone can respond. We want to create something that takes all the best pieces of what was helpful for us and puts it together into something that everyone can understand and support someone else. So it was created kind of out of that spirit and energy to say, we want to take the dynamics of what brought us healing and share that with other people.
Which I think is so powerful, especially as peer specialists, that notion that you can connect because of that common healing that we have as human beings, which is so powerful. So there are 3 phases to emotional CPR. The C in eCPR, so E is emotion, C is connection, P is empowerment. They cheated there, and we're okay with that. And the R is revitalization.
So those 3 phases help us connect with another person or connect with ourselves.
And actually, the connection piece is one that we talk about very in depth in the full training, because connection can be awkward and uncomfortable, and you can connect with someone and just disconnect with them. So that's an important facet of it.
So we wanted to mention why eCPR, right? Like, what's different about eCPR from a lot of other opportunities we have to learn how to be in space with others. And for me, I think it's a great reference to say that eCPR is like CPR. So just like it's a public health education program, we learn how to resuscitate someone's physical heart when they're in distress. eCPR is for our emotional hearts, and it's about heart-to-heart connection. That is the foundation, is that connection piece. So eCPR was created, but it took a lot of foundations of a lot of other pieces that are really powerful in understanding how we support folks in distress or crisis. So one of those is being trauma informed. And this is understanding the prevalence of trauma, the subjective nature, meaning kind of how it affects us differently, different experiences, and how trauma often has a relational component. It affects how we can be with ourselves and with other people. eCPR is culturally attuned, or incorporates cultural humility. And this is a piece around understanding how we can see another person, right, and understand that their experience of the world, how they came to know about the world, and how they are in the world may be very different based on their individual, family, and collective culture. And it's really important to understand that in our connection with others. We like to say that connection is prevention. And eCPR absolutely works for folks that are experiencing suicidal thoughts or feelings. In fact, I think it's one of the most powerful gifts we can offer to someone in extreme distress, is just being there and being present so they don't have to be alone in that kind of pain and darkness. And it incorporates peer practices. And what we mean by that is understanding the concept of mutuality. And that is, we are coming to each other as humans. We are coming to each other. We both have things to give and share. And we both need things. But we're coming to that space as kind of not a helper and a helpee, or not someone who's struggling and someone who's well, but as kind of peers. And eCPR really powerfully addresses burnout and compassion fatigue, because it's about being connected with ourselves, connected with our emotions, so we can kind of sit in that and be with that and share that with another human through heart-to-heart connection.
And that is the foundation of eCPR. Hello again. So we shared with you the foundations of emotional CPR and kind of what grounds eCPR. And Karen and I have shared many times how much eCPR has impacted our lives and what it has meant to have this practice of emotional CPR in our lives. So we are going to share some of that. I think one of the most impactful pieces of emotional CPR for me has been validation of who I am and being seen and heard in a way that I have not been before. And I think there is so much power in that, especially when we're talking, like we talked about the trauma piece and the suicidal thoughts and feelings piece. And for me, personally, the trauma healing is really important. But one of the stories that I share very often in our trainings is the story around Emma leaving for college. And I'm a single mom. My daughter, at 18 years old, was leaving for college. And although people had told me how big it was like I knew it up here, but I didn't feel it here. And she left for college, and probably the first month it was all about, is she getting settled? You know, I was still focused on her, and then October hit, and I started to feel very alone. And there were people in my life that I could say I feel very alone, and like, I don't know where I'm going from here. I don't know what my life is going to look like. And there were a lot of people that were uncomfortable with the level of sadness that I was expressing. And very often I use the word comfortability. So there wasn't comfortability with the level of grief and distress that I was feeling. And that invalidation or dismissiveness or whatever I was receiving, I don't think it was done maliciously or with ill intent, but it was this uncomfortableness, again, with the level of grief I was feeling. And my depression, my feeling of despair grew and grew and grew every time I was invalidated or dismissed. And this dear woman right here, who knows emotional CPR, was the first person that looked at me and said, I can feel how much pain you're in. And it wasn't until that level of pain was acknowledged that I was able to move through it. There was validation of my story. There was validation of where I was right in that moment. A lot of the experiences that I had was people looking either forward or backward. And, you know, your daughter's only 2 hours away from you. Imagine all of the time you will have for yourself now. And I couldn't even fathom it because I was so lost. And eCPR filled so much of that in Karen holding that space for me. She wasn't trying to fix me or dismiss me or have me move through it really quickly. And I think that's, in a nutshell, that's what eCPR is to me. And I feel so grateful being a trainer because we get to witness those moments, right? We get to see people being seen and heard for the first time, and it is so impactful.
I love that story and how many things it kind of lifts up about what makes eCPR different, right? And I think one of the pieces you lifted up is really powerful is this idea of holding space. Or if I could best describe it, it would be like making a container, right, to hold emotions for yourself or for someone else. And a lot of times I think we don't even have permission to acknowledge what those emotions are, right? We're not comfortable with those emotions. I mean, I think about, it's a comfortability. I think about like I like this picture of we all carry this like baggage around emotion, right? What we've been told, like emotions good or bad, emotions that are okay to express, emotions that aren't okay to express. And for me, the gift of eCPR was helping connect and unpack, like, why was I uncomfortable with anger or fear, and telling someone else that I was afraid. Really, really powerful. But the piece that you named that for me is the piece of eCPR that I talk about the most is this fixing piece, right? Like I'm a mom, like your instinct, like your kid is hurting, like your kid has like this problem and you're like, oh, I know how to that, right? Like our instinct is to fix. And a lot of times, I think in doing that, we're not hearing the whole story and everything that's coming with it. So for me, eCPR was this opportunity to set that baggage down. Like, oh, if I view someone as fundamentally whole, I don't have to fix them.
So
I don't have to know
powerful.
the answers. Like, I just have to hold space. I just have to make that container to be present with that other person. And so I think in that time, right, where you set that down, right, I don't have to do that and then I can just be there and truly listen. And a lot of times my brain still goes there. And I remember when I took the training, they were like, well, then just name it to the other person. Like, say it out loud. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm thinking of, you talked about housing. I'm thinking about 6 other resources that have to do with housing. Like, do you even want these resources? Like, that's where my brain went. And giving permission to folks to set that down.
And to be human.
And to be human, right? And that, I'll often say that there's no greater gift than holding space for someone else, and there's no greater gift than like holding someone else's story. And I think about all the times like we sit and talk together and we are at the end and then we're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for listening. And the other person's like, oh, thank you so much for telling me what's really going on. And we're just like, for trusting you. We're like, thank you, no, thank you. And that's that revitalization piece, right? That's that piece that comes from really, truly being present with someone for a period of time and holding space for your own emotions, naming those, right? And connecting with someone else.
Right. I think another piece of that is and I know we put the phrases together like mistake making and risk taking, that our culture is not one that encourages that. And I think one of the most beautiful parts of being human is that awkward, messy, slipping up, falling. In fact, we were talking about that just a minute ago, how to me, that's where the beauty is, when you can go, did you just see me trip? I looked back and I pretended there was something there. And you can giggle about it and laugh about it because it's human nature.
Right.
You know, and I think that's such a big piece of it. You don't have to think about perfectionism and saying the right thing at the right time because there's going to be impact. With eCPR, you can just be there and be present in the moment. It's so powerful.
Because when you're doing that, right, when that monologue's running in your head of like, I've got the next great thing to say, like I can't hear you anymore.
Right. And as human beings, that's really, really hard to do.
Right.
Like you said, with your kids, that's probably one of the hardest. With my daughter, seeing her in pain is one of the most difficult things ever. And it's so important to allow a person to learn.
Yes.
And it's so hard, especially where children are concerned. I think it's a little bit easy. Well, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's not at all.
So our eCPR journey has been one of exploring, of learning, of mistake making and risk taking. There's been plenty of that. And we'd like to invite you to join on this journey with us. So we offer a 2-hour intro class where we unpack these things a little bit more, a 12-hour practitioner certification. Notice we say practitioner. eCPR is a practice. It's not like, here's your certificate, go hang it on the wall. You're, eCPR trained now.
Maybe not.
It's a practice. And so we also have a community of practice that continues the learning. It keeps the learning alive. And that's really important to us to name that this is a continual practice. So we hope you join us in eCPR. We get vulnerable, it's authentic, it's experiential, and it will shift the way you support yourself and others.
Right on.
Right on.
Thanks.
Thank you.